It's an incredible honor to be here today and to stand in front of the faculty and the staff that have produced an amazing class, the class of 2019. I've never been a commencement speaker like this before, so I didn't know exactly what to do. So when Dr. Ward called me, I thought actually he was kidding because he and I go back a very long time. And I said, Gary, I don't know the first thing about commencement speaking. What should I talk about? And he said, I don't know, tell them something your parents told you. I said, have you ever met my parents? My parents, if they were alive today, were the kind of couple they write memes about today. Instagram accounts would be famous with the nutty things my parents said. I said, they weren't exactly Aristotle and Maya Angelou. I don't know if you want advice from my parents on how to change the world. You see, my parents were a little bit different. Let me introduce you to my dad. My dad, he had the figure of Pavarotti, Dom DeLuise, and Danny DeVito, all smushed into one little Italian. And he grew up first generation, just like you, many of you, first generation graduate. And he was, let's just call him a fixer. My dad was a fixer. Now, not in the Italian mafia sense, but he had the Italian fixing ability. He could see things that were wrong that nobody else could. He would fix your tie, he would spit in his hand and he would fix your hair, the first Italian mousse, and sometimes he would fix your attitude. Man, would he fix your attitude. And somehow my dad had this miraculous sense of being able to see things that other people couldn't. One day I was walking down the street and out of nowhere I heard this godly voice and it said, I know you saw it. Go back and get it. You were better than that. Make it better. And well, I'd like to tell you that I had no idea what he was talking about. But in the busyness of my day, I actually, and you've done it too, so you can't tell me you haven't done this. I walked like a Baby Ruth wrapper on the ground, just moving, and I missed it. But he saw it, and he made me go back and get it. My mother, on the other hand, she was the organizer. She too was a first-generation graduate of a nursing school in Wilmington. The granddaughter of an Austrian Jew and an Irish Catholic who both fled their countries to be in a better place. But she was the ultimate organizer. She made anal retentive look chaotic. And she had this amazing ability to get us to do her work. So she would do the laundry, she would go to the grocery store and lay everything on the very first step. Did anybody else have a mom like that? Everything went on the very first step. And there was one rule: you never went upstairs empty-handed. Now, you couldn't pick through the little pile and pull your things out. You had to grab the whole pile and make the distribution, or you'd get in trouble. And she didn't really care about much else, but you never went upstairs empty-handed. One night, I came in at about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was in the 12th grade. And so I knew I was going to be in trouble. So I came in at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I snuck in the door, and bam, it was like really creepy. There shows up my mother. And she's standing there in her hair's done, she's in her nightgown with a robe and slippers, and she looks at me and she puts her finger in my chest. She says, I don't care how hard it was to get here. I don't care how late you are, but don't you dare go upstairs empty-handed. And then she just sort of drifted off. A little strange in my book, but advice nonetheless. The woman who I want you to meet today is my grandmother. My grandmother, like my grandfather, quit elementary school at a very early age. My grandfather had to quit school in the 6th grade because he got stoned on the way to school. Now, they threw rocks at him. Let's just be really clear. They threw rocks at my grandfather on the way to school. My grandmother left in the 8th grade because she wanted to work in the family quarry here in Wilmington. And as she grew older, she realized she needed some extra skill. So she went to this little place called Goldey. And when she went to Goldey, it showed her in an Italian culture that sometimes shunned women's participation, that you could have grit and change the course of history by just having a little bit more education than everybody else. And my grandmother had grit. She went to the Goldey School, and her contribution led 2 companies to span multiple generations. You would love my grandmother. And I know that I know you because of her, because you have grit, class of 2019. Don't forget, I saw your secret files. I know all about you. I know you worked hard. Some of you got your bachelor's degree, then returned for your master's degree. Some of you worked a full-time job and got it done. Some of you crossed cultural boundaries just to be here. I am so proud to be on a podium where in a class of 545 countries are represented in your class. That is an unbelievable accomplishment. I saw your athletic director earlier today. He tells me that 100% of the women's tennis team, 10 players, all come from different countries. I don't know how they talk to each other, but that must be one heck of a diverse tennis team. Unbelievable. So not to be outdone by the pastor, to the contingent that comes all the way here from China, I'd say ni hao. To the folks from India, namaste. To the Germans, guten Tag. To the Colombians, I say hola. And to my friends where I come from, far away in Delaware County, I say yo. It hasn't been easy for a lot of you. Some of you, class of 2019, are missing people that you wish were here with you today. There's no doubt that somewhere in some of your hearts is a little bit of missing someone. So I salute one of your graduates who this year lost her dad. As an only child, on her own, she put together the arrangements, only to have to turn around and care for her mother that subsequently had a stroke. You have grit, class of 2019. You don't get through a class, a year, a GPA like that if DNA isn't in your DNA. I'm sorry, if grit isn't in your DNA. There's someone in this audience tonight who maintained a full-time job, maintained a full-time education, has 2 children, and somehow rocked it through this year. And if you'd like to find her, I think she's probably asleep in row 14. That is an unbelievable demonstration of the grit that this class has. And you're going to need it. I hope you realized when you walked through this door that you are closing a chapter in your life. You are putting the final punctuation on something that you worked so long and so hard for. But today is the end of it. And when you walk outside those doors, there is a golden beacon shining down on you. If you are brave enough to cross that chasm, it is day one. Not for you, but for them. Graduates, this world has been waiting for you a long, long time. You can clap. You have struggled and you have sacrificed. You are just like my grandmother. I've got a news for you. That world outside is a paradox. It is joyful, and it is sad. It is innovative, and it is broken, and it is waiting for you. And I know that you can do it because I've seen you. You've succeeded, and you've studied your tail off and still failed. You fell in love. You had your heart broken. You developed over these years the grit that it takes to turn this world in another direction. You can do this. Do you know how I know? Because I've seen people with grit just like you. As I begin to close, I'd like to tell you about one young man who I know that developed grit just like you, but he had gnarly the opportunity that you had. A fraction of the resources, a fraction of the support. But what you share with him is grit. On the other side of this world tonight is a young man by the name of Ji Sung-ho. Ji Sung-ho grew up in North Korea, an impoverished young man with nothing to his name. As he grew up through the elementary school, he saw his classmates die off from starvation. He saw his grandmother die from the same fate and was only slightly joyful because he got an extra ration of rice to make it because of the sympathy of the regime. In his starvation, he climbed on top of a coal car, fell off, had his arm and leg severed. The North Korean regime amputated it with no anesthesia. His family sacrificed what rice they had to bring him back to life. He stood at a river facing China, his chasm, knowing that death was behind him and not knowing what was ahead of him. He didn't know that people like you existed on the other side of that river. So with one arm and one leg and a wooden crutch that his father made, he made that swim. He got up on the other side and walked 6,000 miles. Ultimately, he made his way to freedom. And with that other hand, he is reaching across that North Korean border, and one at a time, he's getting 26 million out. And I tell you that story because I know at this moment, he's watching you. He wanted to see what American grit looked like. And I am so proud to introduce you to him. Ladies and gentlemen, there are going to be moments outside these walls where you are going to be moving so fast that it's confusing and it's distracting. But I need you to hear that voice that's deep inside you when it says, go back. You are better than that. Make this place better. And I don't know why my grandmother put me here today, any more than I don't know why on a particular day my mom put on a beautiful dress with her sister by her side and drove into an intersection, and a distracted driver lifted his head with not enough time to send them to heaven. And at that moment I thought, what joy could come from something like this? But today as I stand before you, I realize she wasn't preparing me to do my laundry. My mother was preparing me to stand in front of you. 500 gritty, graduating seniors who have exactly what it takes to change the world. And to look you in the eye and tell you, the road might have been tough. It may have taken a long time to get here. But don't you dare go upstairs empty-handed. Class of 2019, I am honored to join you. Let's go change this world together. God bless.